Listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I will say. My good friend.
And I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level works.
Dr. Pei, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Pei? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC to do this poll?
Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a tongue man too, so stop at that. Tell everybody you are a tongue man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more, who've always aspired to do better, who've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can't pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pull together a few months before you think an election is going to call and you say we want to win an election, so let's come together.
We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of the Bubb Report. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellon Bubb. We are happy you can join us for another Sunday. And now, before we get into this week's editorial, certainly we want to take this opportunity here to wish a dear aunt, I could call her an aunt, but really she's a cousin, Jean Ambrose, a very happy birthday. She celebrated her birthday last week in Grenada. So we want to wish her a happy birthday. Of course, for those who may or may not know, Jean Ambrose, of course, is the older sister to Teacher Mary. Teacher Mary, of course, who is also a cousin of mine, was a teacher at the St. David RC School and the wife of the late Roy Gilliam, aka the California Bar, the proprietors of the California Bar in PT Esperance there in St. David. And now for this week's editorial. Now, cancer incidence has been rising in the Caribbean, and it is expected to have a significant adverse implications for the health of people in the region and health systems in this decade. Now, while developed countries, for the most part, enjoy the benefits of advanced technologies and adaptive systems in cancer control and management, a different experience confronts a large segment of the Caribbean population. Now, one such cancer that continues to affect Caribbean men is that of prostate cancer. Now, numerous studies show that the mortality rate for prostate cancer in the English-speaking Caribbean is higher than many developed countries, and there is a difference in the incidence among the various Caribbean nations, with Grenada having one of the highest prostate cancer and prostate cancer mortality rates in all of the English-speaking region. Now, misperception about the disease, a lack of regional guidelines, and the poor access to care are some compounding factors that result in worse outcomes for these men compared to men in higher income nations. Now, urologists and oncologists in the region, while well-trained, are limited in number and in most cases do not offer newer treatment modalities. Now, overall, only a few island nations have cancer registries, and this remains a significant need for more population-based studies to assess guideline adherence and outcomes. Now, additionally, men of African descent from the Caribbean have higher rates of age-standardized mortality compared to their African-American counterparts and their counterparts from Africa. Now, this has historically been explained by differences in healthcare access, diagnosis, and screening. In Martinique, Trinidad and Tobago, intermediate and high-risk groups represent 92% of diagnosed cases, reflecting a later stage of presentation, possibly due to poor disease awareness and healthcare infrastructure. Now, Caribbean-born Black men diagnosed in the United States had significantly higher survival rates as compared to their counterparts diagnosed at home in the region. Additionally, while Caribbean-born Black men in Brooklyn had similar survival rates compared to US-born Black men, those from Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago had 12 and 4-fold increased risk of death, respectively. Now, according to Kandawala et al., in a March 2022 study, increased collaboration among Caribbean countries, along with the development of cancer registries, are needed for a more robust collection of epidemiological data, allowing for measurement of progress and improvement in region-specific intervention. They claim that this will also create opportunities for further research of the genetic and molecular characteristics of the disease, improving guidance of cancer management. Now, folks, as we go to break, the Bubb Report joins the national community in offering solidarity and support to a young and ambitious Grenadian entrepreneur. Now, Sharonelle Andrew, who is currently battling a medical crisis owing to a brain tumor. Now, and she's the talent behind the Madame Luke's, which is an all-natural skincare line and luxury scented candle line. And of course, they operate out of that new mall down there in, the name is escaping me now. And of course, that included a special edition candle that celebrated Grenada's 50th anniversary of independence. Now, a few months ago, she was struck by a drunk driver, and not too long after, she started experiencing severe headaches, which, as it turns out, was a rare brain tumor. Now, a GoFundMe has been created to support this young Grenadian entrepreneur and mother of two. Now, we urge you to give generously, and we will be posting a link to that GoFundMe on the Bubb Report social media pages as well. Folks, this is the Bubb Report. We'll be right back for the first segment of the program. Please stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, if you're joining us, please remember to like and share this week's live stream. For those of you over on our YouTube page, please do us a favor by liking and hitting that subscribe button as well, so that others can have an opportunity to participate in this week's edition of the program. Now, the lower house of the Dominica Parliament on Wednesday, March 19th, 2025, passed 3 electoral reform bills, reinforcing what the government says is the country's commitments to free and fair elections. Now, the House of Assembly in Dominica debated and passed the Registration of Electors and Regulations Bill 2024, the House of Assembly Elections and Registration Bill 2024, and the Electoral Commission Bill 2024, interestingly, with bipartisan support. Now, the Skerritt-led administration says the legislative measures aim to enhance the electoral integrity, improve transparency, and modernize voting procedures in line with international best practices. Now, according to the island's Attorney General, Levi Peter, he says this, quote, "The objective is always to establish and maintain an electoral system and process which is free, fair, and free from fair, as well as one which ensures that as many people are as qualified and lawfully entitled to exercise their franchise are able to do so," unquote. However, the Electoral Reform Coalition and some members of the opposition in Dominica expressed disappointment that the government went forward with the bills without proper consultation. The opposition also expresses the view that the reform recommendations do not include campaign finance reform and perverts the residency requirement clause for voter eligibility in Dominica, among other taints. Now, economist and political leader of the UWP, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, stresses that this attempt by the current administration is to manipulate the electoral process and it threatens Dominica's democracy. Now, while the bill was being debated inside of the House of Assembly in Dominica, and while opposition MPs voted in favor of the suite of legislation, plumes of tear gas hung over Dominica's capital as police fired rubber bullets into crowds of protesters, marking a violent crescendo in the island nation's contentious electoral reform process. Now, Dominica police have arrested several individuals following a protest in Roseau on the March 19th that escalated into clashes with police, including the use of tear gas and rock bullets, which injured several protesters. Now, among those arrested were former MPs Hector Spags John and Daniel Lugay, along with Paula Celestine, Samuel Durad Batiste, Balo Charles, I hope I'm not pronouncing those names correctly, and other protesters, respectively. Now, here to make sense of Dominica's electoral bill are Mr. Emmanuel Nanthon, who is the president of the Dominica Labour Party, as well as Dr. Thomson Fontaine, who is the political leader of the Dominica United Workers Party. I'm mixing you all up. I'm switching you all here. I'm switching your political roles. I do apologize, viewers in Dominica, for this. It was not intentional. But gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report. I just want to be clear, again, because we are not on the ground in Dominica, the intro that we just articulated to our viewers, is there anything there that we left out, or is this an accurate picture of what is happening in Dominica now?
If you would like me to...
Yes, Mr. Nanthon, go ahead, sir. Welcome.
Yeah, let me just say good morning to you and good morning to your listeners and viewers.
Yes, sir.
It is indeed an absolute pleasure being here with you to try to set the record straight.
Yes.
So in your introduction, you said, and I wrote, tear gas, and you said that some civilians were injured. The record would show that there were some policemen who were injured, and there were no civilians that were injured. And the record would show, and if you look at the videos coming from it, the policemen stood nicely by their barricades, and you could see in the morning there were protesters pulling the barricades from the police, and even before that, there were videos out, or on social media in Dominica. There's some wide-ranging videos widely shared with one of Dr. Fontaine villager, Washburn Coffee, telling him that we could come by the Fort Young barricade. We have about 50 of us there, so 50, not large numbers. We had 50 people there, and there was one policeman, so they could breach. Subsequent to that, you saw an increase in the crowd there to about 150, and there were drone shots to show that. Subsequent to that, you could see people who were pulling the barricades. Subsequent to that, you could see a social media live footage of one of the protesters asking people to come to the area to bring trucks and bring sand, bring stones, and bring bottles. Subsequent to that, you could see a vehicle coming forward, and you could see the driver went out to talk to somebody. I know who it is. I wouldn't call any name now, but the driver went out to talk to somebody, and later in that afternoon, they started to pelt bottles and stones at the police. So it was nothing where the police opened tear gas or stones or rubber bullets at protesters. It was a well-orchestrated action by the United Workers' Party, and they kept announcing it. They were mobilizing. They were on radio, and they had town hall meetings around the country, asking people to come out to stop the bill. Now, there's only one way we could stop a bill in Parliament if you're not going to have the votes against it. And particularly if you have people voting for the bill, there's only one other way that you could stop it. If your own people are voting for the bill, there's only one other way that you could stop it. So I just wanted to set that record straight, as you mentioned it.
Dr. Fontaine, welcome to the Bubb Report. So we hope to have you back because, of course, we will be relying on your expertise in other areas. But Mr. Nathan here is saying that your opposition, you all were the ones who provoked this action that prompted a response from law enforcement in Dominica.
Yes,
what say you?
A very good morning to you, Dr. Bob, and also to Mr. Nanton and to your many listeners. I'm thankful for the opportunity to set the record straight. I heard Mr. Nanton mention that police officers were injured. This is the first time hearing of it, and I would like Mr. Nanton to give us a name of those police officers because I've not heard it before. That's news to me. What we did see was a brutal attack on one particular protester who happens to be a gentleman you mentioned earlier, Balo Charles, who was viciously assaulted by a police officer while walking quietly away. And this has made the rounds. It is on social media. I have not seen not one video footage of police officers being hurt. What I have seen is protesters and police officers tussling over a barricade. And in that particular time, when there was that tussle going on back and forth, nobody in the crowd attempted to hurt any police officers. We respect our police officers in Dominica. We have great love for our police officers. And under no circumstances would individuals hit or in other way attempt to injure any police officers. I will maintain that the aggressors in this instance were the Dominican police, as they've always been, because our Dominica police has zero tolerance for any kind of dissent. They've treated us brutally in the past. Every single time we've come out in peaceful protests, the police find as their first reaction is to use rubber bullets with a view to injuring people. Persons were hit in the chest, in the legs. They're not even shooting for legs. One individual was hit in the chest with a rubber bullet. We have an individual, for example, in Salisbury, where the police are heard saying, shoot, in explicit terms, the man, shoot the F man. And then the guy was subsequently shot in his leg right in front of his home. So we have a pattern. In 2019, for example, on the eve of election, RSS troops, some of them from the region, along with Dominica police, opened fire on innocent protesters again in Salisbury, injuring two. Live rounds were used. This is the record that we have. So when Mr. Nanton sits there and talks about, the opposition and all the rest of it, we're doing what we are supposed to do under Article 1 of our Constitution, which is to scream at our government, which is to stand up when we think that our rights have been somehow undermined, and when we believe that there is legislation, as was in the case of the electoral reform bills, that are clearly meant to maintain the cheating legacy of this government, because that's what they've done. They've cheated their way to the past 3 election cycles, and now they're trying to do it by enshrining that in our laws. And we're saying that should not happen. It is wrong. And what we're calling for is the level playing field. And I hope that Mr. Nanton understands that.
Well, let us now get into the weeds of this particular electoral reform legislation. And first and foremost, Mr. Nanton, I want to begin with you here, sir, representing the administration. Now, the opposition is claiming that, of course, in our background research, we found that, in fact, consultations were held. Now, with respect to the quality of the consultations, that is a question that I think we need to interrogate further. But there is also the question of the recommendations from Justice Dennis Byron's report. Now, how much of those recommendations were in fact included in the legislation? Or was it a case that some of those recommendations were not included, and why were they not included?
Well, it's a good thing. So if we have to take it retrospect and go back,
yes,
we have a United Workers Party. We used to have a United Workers Party. That party is now defunct. They are remnants of the party trying to they're fighting against each other every day, and they're trying to see what they could do to keep in touch. And it's not often that I would want to attack people. That's not the Labour Party. The Labour way is about people. We are, as a party, celebrating 70 years anniversary. Started on the 24th of May, 1955. So this Labour Party has a legacy of ensuring that we fight for the rights of people to vote. That is our legacy, the rights for people to vote, and we are passionate about our people. So right to vote, right to land, right to education, right to houses, right to healthcare. That is the things that we are passionate about as a party. It's not about Roosevelt Scarrett, Emmanuel Nanton, Dr. Mark, Dr. Vince Henderson, or the other people in the party. We are continuing a tradition where people of Dominica come together to fight and to work for the rights of the working class. And that is what Labour is about. So Roosevelt Scarrett and his administration ensured that, over the last 8 years, we have given over 2,000 homes to Dominican people. We have ensured that we put in place a policy where we have a Yes We Care program to take care of the people who are elderly among us and less fortunate among us. We ensured that we have put in a program to have university education for at least one Dominican in every household of Dominica. We have made healthcare free for all who are under 18 and free for all who are over 60. We have ensured that every Dominican child has a right.
Mr. Nanton, yes, with respect, this is a recitation of your government's policy. Let us stick to the issue here about the specific legislation, the Byron recommendations. Yes.
On the electoral reform, we started a process on that a long time ago. In fact, we took that to Parliament in 2017, and the opposition protested like they did last week, or was it the week before? We withdrew the bill that was being placed in Parliament, and that was done by the Commonwealth. The opposition had one particular area that they did not like. We withdrew the bill, and then we withdrew the part that they were not satisfied with. The leader of the opposition back then, Lennox Linton, went on the radio, went on air, and said the bill as it is now suitable, is now good for us. So we went back with the bill. They got one of their supporters to put an injunction in the court to prevent the bill from going through. After the political leader, who was before Dr. Fontaine is fairly new kid on the block, said that it was good. The bill got held up. We went back through the legislation. We went back through consultation. So Dennis Byron came in. We brought in the OAS. We brought in the Commonwealth. We reviewed the bills. We had consultations in every community among Dominica. Mr. Linton was there in a lot of the consultations. Mr. Edison James, the former prime minister and leader of the party, was there. A lot of the supporters were there right through. Interestingly, though, while those consultations were taking place, Dr. Fontaine was not seen at a single consultation held for those. We went in with the thing. We paid Sir Dennis Byram, well-respected jurist, to lead us on that, which he did and presented it. The United Workers' Party, when Sir Dennis presented his report, you know what they did? They had a ceremony to burn this, Sir Dennis Byram report. They had a ceremony at which they carried live on Facebook and other social media, and they burned his report. That was what they did. We went on with the program. They will give and take in the program, and we, with the Dominica Labour Party, the areas there that we did not agree with, for instance. If I could just point out one or two of them. We believe that as Dominicans, if you're going to have an ID, let's have a national ID card. If you have a national ID card, you use it to travel to OECS countries, you use it at the banks, at other institutions among Dominica, you use it every day, you are likely to have it and have access to it. Now, the Workers' Party insisted that they wanted a voter ID card. We said, okay, that's what you want. For compromise, a voter ID card you use once every 5 years, you're likely to misplace it. But we will give in and let you have a voter ID card. So we said, okay, we want it in the Dominica Labour Party as well, to give every Dominican who are on the voters list, according to our constitution, a right to vote, because you cannot take off people from the voters list who are on the list. So we say we will let people come in and we will let them confirm that they are who they are. I am Emmanuel Nanton. Here's my driver's license. Here's my passport. Here's my social security card. We have to show a Dominican valid ID and confirm that I am alive. I want to stay on the list. Because Dr. Fontaine and his party said that there were dead people coming out to vote. They said that the list was bloated. The list is large, and we agree that the list is large. The people who lived in Dominica 40 years ago, 30 years ago, who were from the Commonwealth, they registered as I did when I studied in England. So I'm on the voters list in England. So if they don't come back, they take them off the list. If people are dead, as they say dead people walk out to vote, they can't come to show that they are alive with the Dominican ID. So we say, let us give the Dominicans everywhere a right and an opportunity to confirm that they are who they are. Last year, the Dominica government introduced bio passports, biomechanic passports, and we send people to major cities around the world where Dominicans reside to confirm and issue new passports for Dominicans. We said that we should offer that opportunity to all our Dominicans like we did on the passports. They said, no, let the people come back to Dominica. We say, okay, we believe you're wrong, but we will concede. Let everybody who wants to do it come back to Dominica, be here in Dominica and say, I am Emmanuel Nanton. Here's my ID, and I confirm. So it's a give and take issue. The only matter I'm aware of that UWP were concerned about, which is something that they put on, that was you call it campaign financing. Mark you, campaign are not won by who have more money. In 2000, the Dominica Labour Party had very little resources. We used a youth arm, including people like Roosevelt Skerritt, Ian Douglas, Emmanuel Nanton, Cecil Joseph, etc. And we went on, and by putting $20 and $40 that we had from our small salaries, we got rid of United Workers' Party, which was a corrupt government of the day back then. And we got rid of them, and we won the government in Dominica. So finance is not something. So every time you put in something, they find something else that they want to use to rally their supporters. And mark you, they don't have many. I want to insist that they don't have many. For this last protest, they had town hall meetings, they had fundraising, they had everything along Dominica, and they came out with 150 people. And then they create pictures of what they wanted to proceed with and let the world believe that Dominica is in chaos, that Dominica is in mayhem. But that is the role, and that is the race or death of what is United Workers' Party, and that is a shame.
Well, yes. Let me bring in the Dr. Fontaine. Of course, Dr. Fontaine, you are, shall we say, a new kid on the block in respect of being elected as the political leader of the United Workers' Party. So congratulations on that score, and of course, congratulations on all of the work you've been doing. I've been reading a lot of your resume, and it's very impressive in respect of how you represent the Caribbean and the IMF and in Africa and in other places. Very important work as somebody from the Caribbean. But sir, the president here is saying, Mr. Nanton is saying here, that a lot of compromise went into the suite of legislation that was brought before the Dominica House of Assembly. That a lot of what you're articulating now For example, in respect of not the campaign finance reform, which was not passed, but in respect of so much compromise around the voters list and things like that, that he feels as if every time you compromise, then you shift the goalpost, if you will, in respect of finding something problematic with the legislation. So let us first speak to that. Speak to what you propose that the administration compromised on what are some of the sticking points, which incidentally, I found it interesting that members of your party who sit in parliament voted in favor of the bill. And of course, I would also give an opportunity to provide broader explanation as to why there was this tension between what was happening outside of parliament and what was happening in parliament. But speak to the issue of compromise here and speak to the sticking points that remain for you as opposition.
Absolutely. And I will in just a minute, but let me just address very, very briefly the comment by Mr. Nanton about the respect for the rights of the Dominican public. And he went through a litany of rights. What I did not hear him mention was the right of the Dominican public to protest peacefully. And that is enshrined in Article 1 of our Constitution. That should have been the top of his list. He did mention the right to housing. But what Mr. Nanton did not tell your audience is that with the 2,000 homes that have been built, not one single person has ownership to those dwellings. The Labour Party, they're building those homes, they're putting their supporters in the homes to ensure that they have the support throughout. As soon as these individuals die, even before the bodies are cold, they take the keys away and give it to somebody else. You have individuals in homes who are not able to use those homes to go to the bank and get a loan and send their children to school. This government has reinforced poverty in the people of Dominica, and they're doing it even through the housing project. So I just wanted to mention that as a beginning. But to speak to your specific question of the compromise, let me just explain something that goes to the heart of that issue. I talked about the cheating legacy of the Dominica Labour Party government. What they've been able to do successfully over repeated election cycles is to look at marginal seats in Dominica. And you have, for example, seats been won by 2 votes, by 5 votes, by 16 votes in Dominica. They have been able to look at those marginal seats. They go to a bloated voters list that exceeds the population of Dominica, a voters list that exceeds the population of Dominica. They look at those at that list, and then they selectively bring people in, charter planes from the United States, charter ferries from Martinique, from Guadeloupe, from St. Martin, where we have large Dominican diaspora populations, and they bring them into those communities where they otherwise would not be able to win, and they win. And they've done that successfully because on that bloated voters list are individuals who have been residing, quite frankly, away for many, many years, some of them over 40 years, that have not been cleansed from the list. So they bring those individuals in. And that's the reason why at the very heart of the so-called reform is to ensure that the individuals who are on that list remains. So what does the law that is now in place offer? And that's what we were dead against. What it offered is that the bloated voters list would remain as is, and that people would go for a process of what they refer to as reconfirmation. So all you needed to do, whether you resided in overseas for the past 40 years or 30 years, you simply had to say, well, that is my name, Thompson Fontaine on the list from Grand Fort, that is my name. You show a current ID and your name get to remain on that list. Completely punching a hole in the residency criteria that was put at the heart of our electoral process to ensure that the persons who were most directly impacted by voting and by the government are the ones who decide the government. But they've taken that away from it. So for the past 3 election cycles, the elections in Dominica have been decided predominantly by voters brought into marginal constituencies. And that is what this legislation attempts now to do, to ensure that this is held. Now, importantly, the legislation also allows for the voters list to be as it is. And if during that 12 to 15 month reconfirmation period, if that is the case, the government decides to call a snap election, the list that goes to the election, the list upon which we'll have an election, will be that same bloated voters list. Now, ask yourself a question, is that reform? Reform in my mind should be to toss this list in the big Caribbean Sea and have every single Dominican who qualifies according to the residency criteria, which dictates that you must have resided within at least 3 months in Dominica during the 5-year election cycle. That would have been better. And everybody who satisfied the residency criteria would now appear to re-register. So that's number one. We were against this very notion that we should have a reconfirmation of a voters list that has been at the heart of the taints that not only us in the opposition have been talking about, but the Caribbean Court of Justice. When they got a chance to look at the Dominica voting process, they were in disbelief. And I would urge our listeners to make reference to the July 19, 2019 CCJ report on the Dominica elections. In their opinion, the Dominica elections cycle processes has been tainted. There were huge taints. And the justices went on to say, and I quote, "No elections in Dominica should be held under the taints that exist, nor those similar taints." They said no election should be held. That came out in July of 2019. What happens? In 2022, with not a single of those taints that the CCJ says is an injustice to the people of Dominica, that the CCJ said will most likely lead to riots and to social disorder, the government of Dominica, in a slap to the face of the justices, went ahead and called a snap election without making a single change to that list. And that is exactly what happened. We had an election in 2022, and that's the reason why, as a responsible opposition who understood that none of those things were dealt with, we decided to boycott this election to send a very strong message. It was as a result of our boycott of this election that the government moved grudgingly towards electoral reform. And to say that we have not been involved in the consultation, we wrote to the government on several occasions. We outlined the key areas that we thought were the taints that the CCJ pointed to and what prevented the government from doing and maintaining their legacy. But the Prime Minister is not interested in this.
Well, Dr. Fontaine, let us take a pin there, and Mr. Nathan, let us speak to those. Again, the issue of the bloated list comes into sharp focus here, and also the issue of allegations. And again, the same issue also happened in Grenada, where you hear the narrative that the ruling parties tend to bring down plane loads of people. In the context of Grenada, it's not ferries per se, but it's JetBlue from New York.
Okay, if I could respond.
So let us speak to those concerns, but also let us speak to the opinion of the Caribbean Court of Justice. The Caribbean Court of Justice has no political ambitions in the context of Dominica. They have no stake in Dominica's political game in respect of the voters list. Those two sticking issues there, please, sir.
Okay, before I come to those two sticking issues, briefly to correct Dr. Fontaine, he said people have no houses that we built for them. That cannot be true. There's a young lady about 100 yards from where I live. We built a house for her on her land. You cannot say she hasn't got ownership. We have given over 400 houses that we did with funds from the World Bank on people's land. That cannot be not having ownership. We have regularized and created certificates of titles for a couple hundreds of people and build lands for them on those lands. That cannot be not having ownership. So Dr. Fontaine, the record on that cannot and is not right at all. We have to introduce new strata rights and legislation for where we build apartments, because we did not have those laws in Dominica. We have gone to Parliament and have instituted those laws and reform to make strata titles available, so these people will be getting the titles. So Dr. Fontaine, please let us not insult the intelligence of people. With regards to bringing in people from overseas, Dr. Fontaine, and I do not like to sit here as a labor right and criticize him and be too difficult on him too much, because once upon a time he was on the other side. And our party is about people and not about criticizing people. He's a weak guy, very, very weak, and he's trying to please too many sectors in his party. So that's okay. But Dr. Fontaine wrote in 2005 that on the question of bringing in people to vote and why we won elections, he told the opposition then that is not true. Dr. Fontaine wrote an article which is still available on his website, thedominica.net 2005, that Labour won the elections because of the Roosevelt Skerritt factor. That is a factor that cares about people. that go out and are in touch with people everywhere. So the manager of the port issued the statistics from the port before the 2 elections, not the last one, the one before that, when GWP came out again and said that we brought in 8,000 people, and they gave the figures of everybody who went to Dominica the week before elections for that year and the year before, whether you came in by private plane, by charter, by boat, by ferry. He gave the figures, and there were no differences in the figure. My friend from Grenada, my brother Sam, who passed away a few weeks ago, and I was at his funeral in Grenada.
That's Samuel Latouche, my good neighbor,
yes,
from St. David's in Grenada. Yes,
Samuel Latouche, before he died, sent me a list, and he said, "Comrade, look at the Dominica election results." And he sent me a list of, I think there's 12 or 14 constituencies where Labour won in every single polling station. Every single polling station. And I talk about winning the seats. We won in every single polling station. So for Dr. Fontaine to come on the side here and tell people that Labour is winning because of we bringing in people, that is ridiculous. So we as a party, we care about people. I'm not talking about the massive infrastructure projects that we're doing, like $1 billion airport, a marina.
Yes.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about winning the hearts of people all over Dominica. And that's why we win. It's not because we bring in people. So the statistics were given by the manager of the port, Mr. Benoit Badwil, to show the people that came in. So Dr. Fontaine know what he's saying is not true. And if you go back to his articles and his writing from 2005, he explained to UWP why we won the election. It wasn't because we were bringing in people.
Let us speak to cleaning up the electors list, the bloated electoral list.
So we said to clean the bloated electoral list, let people confirm. It's not reconfirmed, Dr. Fontaine, it's confirmed. I come in to say, and I confirm that I am who I am. So we will bring in people and they will confirm, and that they remain on the list. So the list would move from 74,000 and a few hundred to whatever it is, those who come in to confirm. That is their right as Dominicans. And Gabriel Christian, Dr. Fontaine, very good friend, with Dr. Fontaine and myself, went to New York in 2000 to have a Rosie Douglas Foundation, where we ask and people to go in and have a right for diasporas to vote. And that was Dr. Fontaine. That is his record and his legacy. Now we're saying something else, not because he believes it, but because his party is divided and is trying to fulfill all sides of the party. He's not a politician. He's not a leader. He's weak. I'm sorry about that.
So, Dr. Fontaine, I'll give you a chance to quickly respond here to just rebut any claims that Mr. Nanton made here about your support of the diasporans, Dominican diasporans getting involved in the electoral process.
Yes, I've always been in favor of our diasporans participating in our election process. What I've been dead against from the very beginning is where it is on an unlevel playing field as it is right now. Because the government has deep pockets. They're able to bring in the plain laws. As we saw, over 20 million, we were told, was spent in the 2019 elections to bring persons in. As a matter of a lawsuit that was brought following the 2009 elections, we had the names of the individuals who came into the various constituencies. That is what I've been against. Also against persons who do not qualify to be doing it. And Mr. Nanton talks about the confirmation of that list. That's exactly why we have a problem, because you're confirming persons who should not have been on that list in the first place. These are individuals who've been away past the 5-year period. So what they have done in one filled swoop is to dig this critical aspect of residency. So this idea of being ordinarily resident in Dominica is out the window, because once you're confirmed on that list, if you've been away for whatever number of years it was, you can still vote. And that is what Mr. Nanton fails to understand has been a critical problem. Now, with regards to my party, I have a very unified and strong party. We're the largest opposition party on the island. And if this Labour Party is so strong and mighty and powerful, why are they jumping through hoops? Why are they employing the police to go against us simply because we're asking for them to do the right thing? You're such a powerful party. Well, allow a clean voters list that respects the rights of the residency criteria. Why not just do that? Why go through that process of confirming individuals who otherwise do not qualify to be on the list? So that idea that the Labour Party is strong, it is complete nonsense, because they've been losing the elections and they would have lost the last 3 elections without...
Dr. Fontaine, you're saying they've been losing the elections. I think that the OAS would beg to differ. Are you suggesting that the OAS observers that there is something wrong in the methodology in respect to how they have been observing Dominica's elections, sir?
I'm suggesting that even when the OAS have spoken, the Commonwealth, every observer mission has spoken to the problems, the taints of our election. They have been begging and pleading for this administration to do the right thing. What they observe is that on the day, yes, everybody is orderly. They can differentiate between somebody who's been away for 20 years and does not qualify to someone who has been in Dominica struggling. They can do that. So on the day of the election, it's peaceful and so on. But at the heart of this is the importation of voters.
But you're speaking to the back end processes here, the alleged importation of voters. I don't want to get sued. The whole issue of the bloated list. But you said that the opposition is united, Dr. Fontaine. Clearly on the day of the vote, that did not bear out. You have inside of the parliament members of the opposition voting yes to the legislation. And in fact, the explanation that you gave was sort of for their vote was sort of a process-oriented explanation that they voted with the hope that there were going to be amendments. And so my question is, before going into the parliament, did the opposition not have a uniform and consistent strategy in respect to how they were going to be treating with not one piece of legislation, it was a suite of legislation in this context. So while inside of the parliament, your members are voting yes, outside of the parliament, your members are dead set in opposition to the legislation. So can you explain the contradiction between those two positions? And what conversations have you been having with the members who voted in favor with the government on this? We're hearing conversation that there have been calls for them to resign. Folks have been saying that they sold out the party and things like that. Can you speak to that tension there, please? That dichotomy.
Yes, absolutely. So let me just be clear to our listeners that the United Workers' Party did not participate in the last election. So we are not represented in Parliament. Okay, because we did not participate. We have no representative in Parliament. There were two independent candidates who won in 2022. These two independent candidates nominated senators. So 4 additional senators came in. So you have 6 members in opposition in the House, in the 30-member parliament. You have 6 members.
So not necessarily UWP rank and file. Thanks for the correction. Thank you for the correction. Yes.
What happened was in our last election in December, the deputy political leader, Delbert Paris, who is a senator, became our deputy political leader. He was elected as a deputy political leader. And that's where the representation comes in, because he is the deputy political leader. Now, when the bill went to its first reading, the United Workers' Party, we sat down together as a party and we outlined 6 measures. We wrote to the government undermining 6 areas where we thought the legislation needed to be strengthened. And this letter was sent to the Prime Minister. I requested an audience. The Prime Minister said that he was traveling. He did not have time for that. And they went ahead and made 0 changes to the legislation that we got from the first reading. So every single member of my party was aware of the problems that we had with regards to the bloated list, with regards to the fact that we now have access to the radio stations, but it does not go far enough because there are no penalties attached to it. So they're now saying that a radio station that has denied us access to the airwaves for the past 3 election cycles, no matter how much money we offer, no matter how much payments we promise to make to them, the state-owned radio station continues to deny us access. This new legislation now allows for access, but it does not impose penalties, so that they can simply say, well, we had something else going on during the time of your life. We could not carry it because there was something else happening. They could go for any sort of excuses, and there is no recourse for us as a party because there are no penalties. So yes, we are getting those half measures, but again, it is meant to guarantee that, because part of the winning legacy of this government, so to speak, has been not only to import voters, but also to ensure that we do not have a voice on a national radio station. So we have reform legislation allegedly, but it does not address these critical areas. So all of those issues were brought up to the Prime Minister. He refused to address them. So we were very clear as to what problems we were having. It goes to the vote in Parliament. We call out our membership, and I heard Mr. Nanton talking about 50 persons. The videos are there. That speaks for itself. Persons came out to demonstrate that they were not in favor of those legislation, that we needed to fix that legislation before it went through, because we do not see it as genuine reform. We see it as simply guaranteeing the cheating legacy of this administration. So we call people out. The member, our deputy leader, is in the Parliament. He votes for the legislation. In my discussion with him, what his explanation to me was they expected that the areas that they agreed to, they were in agreement to, as was ourselves. So we're in agreement to everything about the House of Assembly and about the chief elections officer and so on, the changing of the age. We have all of that we agreed to. So in his view, he agreed to some parts of the bill, and he's saying yes, what are the parts of the bills that he agreed to? Now, that is for him to explain in terms of the process that went through in the House. But it does not take away from the fact that our party, from the very beginning, we were opposed to the legislation that was going through to Parliament, and we continue to remain opposed. Even now, it is the law of the land. We are asking that this legislation be repealed and that new legislation that guarantees a level playing field is in place. What we have, Dr. Bob, in Dominica is we have seen some grading of the playing field, but you can't come out to bat on that wicket. It is still not.
Now, outside of the strategy for public protest, will there be any legal? Of course, the CCJ has had past rulings. They've articulated past opinions in respect of the legislation in Dominica. But would you also be seeking judicial relief in the context of this suite of legislation?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We intend to. We believe that it is important enough for democracy that we employ every means at our disposal. Peaceful protest is one. Going through petitioning the courts is another, and we'll absolutely use that to ensure that we get the reform. And this government has been in office for 25 years. All right, why not just do the right thing? Why not just do away with all of this cantankerous and vexing problems that we spend so much effort on? Dominica is struggling. That's probably one of the countries in the bottom rung of the ladder in the Caribbean in terms of its economy. Our people are leaving the island in droves. The country is on its knees under this administration. Yet we are spending so much time on processes. And what these processes are intended to do is simply to preserve this government in office, rather than showing that the people who are competent enough, persons that the Dominican public know are able to bring this economy out of the abyss, will be in office. Why not allow that? And they expect when those are pushed against us that we should just sit by for arms fold. No, it's not going to happen. We are Dominicans. We belong in Dominica. We have a right. We have a right under our constitution to be going up for office, and we'll continue to fight tooth and nail to ensure.
And would that include participating in the next election? Because of course, your predecessors decided to stay out of the election because of claims of legitimacy. But are you now going to be committing to yourselves as a new political leader that the United Workers' Party will be contesting all candidates in the next election, sir?
Yes, we will.
You will be contesting. Okay, very well.
We've done that part of already saying away. We have done it.
Right. Yes. So now let's give Mr. Let us get Mr. Nathan. Now, equal time. Yes, go ahead, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Fontaine made a number of mistakes again. If you fact check them, our laws have no terms of residency for voting. Under our electoral laws, they say you must be a resident you must be a Dominican or Commonwealth citizen resident at the particular area for a minimum of 3 months, 3 months or more. So that is to register. But to vote, once you're on the list, you have a right to vote. So the people who are registered, they went through the process and they have a right to vote. So whether you move there or you're out, that's okay. You're registered. Now, if you look again at the question of voting, when the Workers' Party felt they were strong in certain areas, they moved a number of people from constituencies to other areas. So if you look at the neighboring constituency where Dr. Fontaine is running and where he ran and lost the elections, La Plaine, the electoral list in La Plaine was reduced at one election because UWP felt that they were strong in that area, and they moved people from La Plaine to vote in the Roseau Central area where they wanted to win. And they registered a number of people at all houses, even at the headquarters, what is now the headquarters of the Labour Party, our Labour House. The building there had a number of people, maybe more than 100 people registered at that address, which was an abandoned property in the center of Roseau, because they moved people from the countryside to vote in Roseau for that. When you speak of the radio program, Dr. Fontaine is fully aware. If you do not, then go back and check it. At the last two elections, we did not use. Tony Astefan, the lawyer for Labour Party, ensured that in the spirit of equal time, we do not carry our events live on Dominica radio station, on DBS. We haven't done that. So Dr. Fontaine is aware of that. Now, on the question of criticizing Dominica and black eye in Dominica, we're a party we're proud people. We're a party that takes care of our people, and whether in housing, education, health, whatever. But to speak of our infrastructural development, Dr. Fontaine is giving a bad picture. People who attack the economies of our people are like economic terrorists. To attack the livelihood of our people, you have been an economic terrorist. To attack the livelihood of women and children, we should not expose people to that. So Dr. Fontaine said that we are the bottom of the economy. Dr. Fontaine is not telling you that we have just completed a $300 million road from Portsmouth through Castlebrooks to the Kalinago territory. He's not telling you that we did a $109 million road from Roseau up to Grand Bay. He's not telling you that this year we will have the world's longest cable car that's been built in the Roseau Valley. He's not telling you that this Christmas we will have a geothermal program over $200 million. He's giving a real bad impression of the country at every single time.
Yes, Mr. Nathan.
$1 billion. He's criticizing, giving a bad picture of Dominica all the time, including that of showing pictures of riots and giving the impression that Dominica is under siege. That is not true. As your friend and my friend said, Sam, we want every polling station in 14 constituencies out of 21 in Dominica. That is Dominica, the Dominica Labour Party.
Yes, now let us get to, and this is the final issue because we have to get to the second segment. The question of, and of course, your political leader, Mr. Nanton, spoke to that as well, and that is the whole question when he was quizzed by Grenada's Calistro Faria on the narrative program, on the whole question of campaign finance reform, which speaks to the whole issue of transparency in politics. And this is just not a Dominica issue. In fact, in the last election in Grenada, there were allegations, for example, that some guy made some payment to some party office based on some cabinet conclusion. We're still waiting to see that cabinet conclusion for those in the government. But let us speak, why was not the issue of campaign finance reform? This is a transformative pieces of legislation here, but campaign finance reform is not included. Why was that?
And we agree. Campaign finance is something that we could look at. As I mentioned before, or maybe not on this forum, campaign finance was not part of the initial discussions that we had. So we say, okay, you want to look at campaign finances? We have no problem in looking at campaign finances, but if you want, that's going to delay the process even longer. So the Prime Minister reported to the Caribbean that he brought that up even at the Caricom level. So we're going to look at a unified approach to campaign finances, because there are a number of things that could hinder the process. So
but Mr. Nanton, elections are separate activities, island to island. So I think every island should have their own campaign finance reform. So putting this as a cover for OECS or Caricom to do, certainly. But at the level of your countries, given that, yes, go ahead.
We're saying we have no problem in looking at campaign finance reform. It can be done at any time in the future. The reform that we put, Dr. Fontaine has said, the members of his party who are in parliament have said, and others have said that it is better than what was there. And it is the same rules that we have everywhere. It is maybe now among maybe the best reform, the best electoral laws we have in the Caribbean at present. It is much better than what was there. If there are rooms for improvement, of course there are rooms for improvement. There will always be, and we have no problem in looking at improving as we continue. But for now, we have instituted and implemented rules that are better, that are far better than what put in before.
Now let's quickly get to some viewer comments. Dr. Fontaine, you wanted to quickly add something.
Yes, just to quickly say, the Labour Party continues, as we see from Mr. Nanton, to be in La La Land. We have the best roads, we have the best infrastructure, the best electoral system, the best of everything. But that does not speak to the reality of today's Dominica. It does not.
So, yes, Mr. Nathan. Yes, Mr. Nathan. Hold on.
The reality is, hold on. Go ahead.
No, hold on, please. Just 1 second. Yes, sir. We have a question from Tessa Barrington. Can you ask the brother of the opinion returned by the CCJ on the original list? It will be the old list if they call a snap election during the review, which will be against what the CCJ ruled. Mr. Nathan, what happens if your political leader decides to call a snap election? What happens to that list?
I don't think that anybody, I don't mean a person, a body, can be above the Constitution of Dominica. So in 2022, it was Dr. Fontaine? Dr. Fontaine party. No, the last elections.
Oh, 22,
Yeah, at the last elections, Dr. Fontaine party, because they were disorganized as they have been for a while, gave us an opening for elections. His party, his political leader, stepped down as political leader of his party without even notifying and giving a notice to the country, not even notifying his party. They stayed without a leader for several months. And then they announced that that they will have an election in several months to come. So they left the door open for the Labour Party to take all the seats. So I, in consultation with the Prime Minister, said the guys and them, they're really not ready to govern. If that's what they're doing, if you call an election now, there's no way that they can even contest the elections. They have to first get a leader, they have to get candidates, they have to get financing for campaign. They're not ready. Let us show the world how disorganized they are, and let us just walk through the gap. That's what we did, and we won the elections. So it wasn't because they were talking of electoral reform. No. That was the excuse that they used. But his party was in existence without a political leader at the time.
That sound like a responsible government?
They have been disorganized. That's who they are, and that's what they are. And that's how they continue to operate in Dominica.
Dr. Fontaine, Mr. Nanton seems to be saying that you all are trying to bring eggs to a Rockstone dance in respect to...
Exactly. Irresponsible.
Dr. Fontaine? Yes.
Look, I mean, it is amazing. I mean, the fact of the matter is, in 2019, they won, how many seats? 19 seats you had in 2019?
16 and then increased to 19.
16, right. So there were 16 seats in Parliament. So already a comfortable majority. But to say that you are just doing this because you want to boast that you've cut the opposition with its pants down, I mean, does that sound like a responsible government? And it's the same thing we are saying. We are hearing bells of election already. You know, less than 3 years after last election. And what about this election thing that the Prime Minister will not allow the process to go through? You have been given a mandate to govern for 5 years. And for heaven's sake, use that mandate to govern. Use the mandate to improve the lives of the people of the country, not to be perpetually looking to elections. And that is the problem that I have with this Labour Party administration. So all of the focus is on elections. How do we win the next one? We can now win the next one, they believe, by basically using those taints that they've won with over all the years and making it into law. That's exactly what we are saying there. And that's the reason why we need to continue to stand against this.
Yes.
Dr. Bob.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Fontaine said to you and to our listeners that that our focus is on campaign. I'm not telling you we love to campaign because we love to be for people. So I'm not saying that we're not in a perpetual state of elections, because that's what politics is about people. But when we speak of what we're doing, you tell me don't say it. We are not just about being and meeting people. We are about taking care of our people. So when I told Dr. Fontaine that we did 2,000 homes, that's not elections, that's not campaigning. When I tell Dr. Fontaine that we build 14 health centers, that's not about campaign. When we build
the one in Grand Forks?
When we 14 health centers.
So why not building the one in Grand Forks?
2 hospitals. That's not about campaign. At present, we are building 7 schools as we speak. That is what the Labour Party is doing. At present, we're building $1 billion.
Are you building or rebuilding?
Without tax. That's what we're doing. And I mentioned some of the roads that we're doing. I mentioned the marina that we're doing. We're building 5-star hotels in Dominica. So Dr. Fontaine said that we're in a perpetual state of elections. Yes, we love people. We love to take care of the elderly, ensure that they have proper homes, that the children are properly schooled, that they have access to healthcare, that they have land. That's what we are about as a party. So when we do that, then you're in campaign mode. That's what Labour is about. And it's not campaign mode of Skerrit or Nanton. We are a party celebrating 70 years as a political institution. And that is the history of Labour. Formed by Felician Allfrey in May 24th, 1955. And we continue. And we will pass on. The current leadership of Labour will pass on that legacy to the future generations of Dominicans, because it's a legacy that ensures that the people will be first, the people will be second, and it will be about the people always. That is Labour. Dr. Fontaine, you can join too. We are open to everybody. Because
yes. Perhaps, Mr. Nanton, you could do a DLP,
that legacy.
DLP event. But gentlemen, time out. We do have to get to the next segment, and I would offer you opportunities for closing comments. But I want to begin with you, Dr. Fontaine, for some closing comments, sir.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Nanton, as well. You know, the thing is, Dominica is a beautiful country. It's a country that I believe can go places. We can be ahead in the Caribbean. Sadly, we are lagging behind in the Caribbean, and a lot of it has to do with the maladministration of this government. They've not served Dominica well. And after 25 years, we see a lot of Skerrit fatigue, a prime minister who has lost his way, quite frankly. We did not get a chance to talk about the other issues, the CBI, the big elephant in the room. We did not get a chance to talk about the fact that we've lost visa-free access to the United Kingdom. And just this past week, the European Union committee has recommended to Parliament to vote to extinguish our visa-free access. All of that is at the feet of this current administration, while they're preoccupied with staying in office instead of ruling and developing the country. What we offer as a party, as a United Workers' Party, is strong individuals who have the competence to back it up and who will stand with the people of Dominica. So all we're asking for is a level playing field and allow the people of Dominica who are most impacted by a government to be able to choose that government in a fair and level playing field. Thank you.
Absolutely. And let me get to Mr. Nanton. Now, Mr. Nanton, as I bring you back in for some closing comments, sir, your political leader has been the subject of a firestorm in Grenada when he attended the National Democratic Congress's recent convention, where he mused openly that he wanted to run against Grenada's longest-serving prime minister, now a former opposition leader and member of parliament for St. George Northwest. Some have chalked that up to a naked political interference into the internal affairs of Grenada's internal politics. Is that a conversation that you've had with your leader? And as president of the Dominica Labour Party, would you advise any of your members, upon receiving invitations from sister parties in the region, to go into those countries and offer political opinions on what happens internally in those countries, sir? Would Mr. Skerrit feel the same way if, for example, Dr. Mitchell comes to Dominica and says that he wants to run against Mr. Skerrit in his constituency?
I was with Dr. Skerrit in Grenada when he spoke.
Yes.
And that actually wasn't what he said. He said, leave that seat for him. He'll deliver it. He said, leave it for him. So he didn't say that he was going to run. So we reciprocated. Dr. Mitchell, that's the younger Mitchell, the brighter Mitchell, was in Dominica and was a guest at our political rally in the Prime Minister's constituency, Vacas, last year. And we reciprocated and attended his rally in St. Lucia.
In Grenada. You mean Grenada, yes.
Yeah, in Grenada. But I think you have just done a good break-in here on your program. It is the first time that any GWP leader went out to describe, when they get the opportunity to speak to the world, and describe Dominica as beautiful. Dr. Fontaine, you did well when you did that. Your party has a history of being critical and black-eyeing Dominica, trying to bring out the bad of Dominica. We believe that we're a beautiful country. We believe that we're a loving country. We believe that as a government and as a party, we are on the same journey. You know what? We are on one mission, and we are actually going the same place. The Calypso Crown of Dominica said the ground that we're working on one day will be our roof. So one day we will all pass on and go to that same house, the great beyond. But what we do between now and then is what's important for us as Labour. We're taking care of those who are less fortunate among us, making sure that they have the things that they need and that they want, and what we do to make the world a better place, make Dominica a better place for Dominicans. Dr. Fontaine, you did well by acknowledging that we're a beautiful country. Get on board and ensure that you do what is best by joining a party with a legacy of hope, vision, dynamism in and out of government, to ensure that Dominica is better, that our Dominican people are better in education, in healthcare, in land reform, whatever it is. That's what we are committed to as a party. And for that, with that, we invite all and sundry to join us to make Dominica a better place. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I wish you and your listeners a great day.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, we just had for the first segment of the Bubb Report, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, who is the political leader, new political leader. He's, getting into that political space. He was in the development space for many years, political leader of the United Workers' Party, and Mr. Emmanuel Nanthan, president of the Dominica Labour Party. Mr. Nanthan, hopefully one day your prime minister, I don't know how he treats with giving media interviews in Dominica, but we are a platform that welcomes everyone. So hopefully one day we'll have him on the Bubb Report. As I've been asking Mr. Latouche, God rest his soul, may he rest in peace. But thank you, gentlemen, for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Cheers.
Viewers and listeners, this is the Bubb Report. We'll quickly take a break and come back with the second segment of the program. Please stand by.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Viewers and listeners, we thank you for staying with us for this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, tropical shipping and other trade experts in the Caribbean, as well as the private sector, is sounding the alarm over a proposed U.S. tariff that could severely disrupt trade across the region. In a strongly worded response to the U.S. Trade Representative's office, the company condemned the move as a crippling blow to American exporters and regional commerce. The proposed measure, which is set to take effect next month in April 2025, would impose a $1 million fee per port call on any Chinese-built vessel docking at American ports. Now, given that most of the vessels serving the Caribbean were built in the People's Republic of China, the impact on shipping costs will be immediate and severe. Now, tropical shipping and other trade experts in the ocean freight business in the Caribbean warned customers that the tariff would drive up freight rates by thousands of dollars per container. It would also disrupt supply chains and threaten the long-standing trade partnership between the United States and its Caribbean neighbors. Now, in a letter to the U.S. Trade Representative's office, Tropical's president and CEO outlined the far-reaching consequences, which will include inter alia. 1. U.S. shipping companies and exporter would bear the brunt of the cost of the surge, losing competitive ground. 2. Logistics and port operations, jobs across Florida and other eastern seaboard hubs would be at risk. 3. Caribbean nations may be forced to pivot to alternative markets, rerouting billions in trade away from the United States. Now, of course, this tariff does not target China. It punishes American businesses and Caribbean economies, according to Tropical Shipping. Now, the proposed action is part of the wider U.S.-China trade war, which has been escalating tariffs and trade barriers. Now, however, shipping experts warn that this latest move places the shipping industry squarely in the crosshairs of this war, threatening the stability of a region already facing economic pressures. And they're calling for coordinated industry responses, and they're urging policymakers to reconsider this policy, this American policy led by the current regime in Washington, before it takes effect. Now, while time is running out, the company, its Tropical Shipping, and its partners are bracing for what could be a major shakeup in the Caribbean trade system, as well as in the economies of the region. Now, here to make sense of all of this are Mr. Joseph Andel, the Honorable Joseph Andel, who is Grenada's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Dr. Patrick Antwine, who is the CEO of the Caricom Private Sector Organisation, and of course, Dr. Thompson Fontaine is remaining with us because, of course, Dr. Fontaine is, prior to his involvement in Dominican politics, also served as an IMF representative, and he also worked in several development initiatives in Africa. And of course, we have Mr. Christopher Dialli. Mr. Christopher Dialli, of course, who was a former business representative in the Upper House of Parliament and a Grenadian entrepreneur. Dr. Fontaine, thank you for staying with us. Honorable Andel, welcome to the Bubb Report again. Dr. Antwine, welcome back. And gentlemen, I suspect, given everything that's happening geopolitically, we will be relying on a lot of your expertise over the next 4 years, if in fact we survive the next 4 years. Not, I'm speaking here existentially, but I'm speaking now economically and otherwise. But gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report. Mr. Andel, I do want to begin with you, and then I will go over to Dr. Antwine. In respect of the current threats of tariffs that will affect shipping and economic interests in the region, we did hear at the town hall meeting, the Honorable Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell spoke about those impacts. But can you talk about, at the Caricom level, what conversations are you having about these threats?
So, good morning to you, Dr. Bubb.
Yes, sir.
and to my fellow distinguished panelists. Dr. Antoine, how are you doing, boss?
Dr. Antoine, you need to unmute the mic there, yes.
Sorry, I was just saying to my dear Foreign Minister, very well indeed. It's a pleasure to be on with you as well.
Yes.
And Dr. Fontaine, I think this is our first encounter. Pleasure to meet you and to be here on the panel with you.
Pleasure.
And my good friend, Brother Chris Diali, Senator Diali. Yeah, I'm hearing that you're moving on to a new phase.
Yes.
So I'd like to congratulate you for all of the yeoman service you have provided to the private and also the public sector in Grenada over the past few years. And to wish you all the very best as you chart new territory. Thank you for having me on, Dr. Bubb.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm hearing a lot of reverberations. So I don't know if it's on my end because where I am now, the internet is extremely unstable. In fact, you may be seeing my mic. That's because
we can hear you loud and clear, though. Yes.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, I had to leave my home so that I could get some signal.
Yes.
Now, this is an extremely troubling situation for us in Grenada and in the wider Caribbean. And what is shaping up to happen is that it seems as if we are going to become collateral damage in a conflict not initiated by us and in which we are only going to be the victims. Now, from our perspective, it is important that Caricom try to take as unified a position as possible. If there was ever a time for Caricom to speak with one voice, this time is now. And it is crucial that we resist any and all attempts to create schisms within the Caricom mechanism. And so far, I'm confident that Caricom as an organization is on the right path. The input of the Caribbean Private Sector Organisation, ably led by Dr. Antoine, is crucial at this point, since their interventions will put us, the policymakers, in a better position to make informed decisions that will be in the interest of the Caribbean people. Now, the United States and the Caribbean have a long shared history in terms of economic, political, security, and other areas of collaboration. And what we do not want is a situation where, well, let me use an analogy. If you see a mosquito on your child's forehead and you have a mallet in your hand, you swing the mallet to kill the mosquito. You may or may not hit the mosquito, but you definitely will contact your child's head with possibly grave, even fatal consequences. So it is our appeal that the United States carefully weigh and calibrate its measures in such a way that the economies of the Caribbean are not crippled. Because if we have crippled economies in the Caribbean, one of the very things that the America First policy is aimed at addressing and redressing: unwanted migration, the continued smuggling of illicit narcotics, the trade in small arms, human trafficking. All of those things will be exacerbated if the economies of the Caribbean were to be destabilized. So we are hoping that the United States take a clear picture of what it intends to implement, that it takes into consideration that we in the Caribbean are not military or economic powers, that governments have an obligation to provide for the security of their citizens and to lay a platform whereby citizens can pursue the creation of wealth and happiness. And any action by our major trading partner, with whom, incidentally, we have a massive trade deficit, that whatever action they take will not lead to the destruction of the economies and the livelihoods of Caribbean people.
Now, Dr. Antoine, I understand that last week, that's the U.S. Trade Office. They're the ones I suspect who will be responsible for implementing these tariffs. They held public hearings last week here in Washington, D.C., and I believe you also participated in those public hearings. And of course, the public hearings was held to discuss the potential consequences of the tariff, which is part of a broader Section 301 investigation into, quote, China's dominance in the maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sectors. I understand that you were at the hearing. So can you speak to what the U.S. Trade Office was attempting to accomplish there? Because we understand that the threats of these tariffs are coming hard and fast.
Yeah. So thank you for having me, and I join with most distinguished Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, and Christy Ali and others, in saying how delighted we are to be here with you this morning on this very, very important issue for the region. So let me say that three things I wanted to point out to your viewers. This started in 2024. It didn't start with the Trump administration, and it came out of a request that was made by 5 labor unions that the China practices should be looked at, and an investigation was launched, and that there was a system of remedies outlined in February of 2025, so after the Trump administration came into office. The CPSO, the Caricom Private Sector Organization, that I have the honor of serving as CEO and technical director on, got hold of this issue as a private sector issue, and I have to join with our distinguished Minister of Foreign Affairs in saying that we have perhaps the best example of how the private sector and governments can work, because we have worked very closely on this matter. The CPSO was able to get an opportunity to present its oral submissions in the public hearings, and we put 6 positions forward. One, that really we respected the US's right under domestic law to institute policies on its own behalf based on its own objectives, priorities perhaps. Secondly, that until US shipbuilding was at such a stage that it could provide for the ships or the vessels that were necessary for what we call short sea shipping, which is what we do between the United States and the small territories in the Caribbean, that they should in fact be hold on the implementation of the measures. And we've asked the USTR to relook how, in the context of we are very focused short sea shipping, this matter would be looked at. And we said, secondly, failing this, if you're not able to do that, to put a hold on it, then we're looking for an exemption. I think that's the highlight of really the presentation that I want to make with you and to the Grenadian and the Caricom population this morning, that we requested an exemption, and we've done this in concert with complete concert with our leadership from the heads. So we've kept the heads completely informed, and we've sought clearance on any position that we've been advocating. The exemption will be based, and Minister is absolutely correct, on the massive trade deficit that we have with the United States. In short, what they're trying to achieve with China, they've already achieved with us, which is a massive trade surplus on the part of the United States. Secondly, that we engage in short sea shipping. And so if you take $1 million and you divide it across 200 containers, the cost per container for us will be prohibitive. But if you take $1 million and you divide it by the long haul Panamax and post-Panamax vessels that carry 7,000 containers, right? Then of course you get a much smaller number. So it's prejudicial for us. And as such, it will put us in a very difficult position. And so we said, look, for short sea shipping, give us a carve out. And thirdly, we use the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act, CBERA, and the Caribbean Basin Trade Preferences Act, and said to them, look, we have a framework in which we have driven successfully trade and development over the last perhaps 20 years, 30 even. So within those three critical points, criteria, your trade surplus, our short sea shipping, and the two principal acts that govern relations between our countries, that you give us a carve out. Let me tell you what I heard quickly. We put on the table the impact on tourism. I have to tell you that when we put that on the table, there were 10 commissioners. You could see their heads snap. They had not thought about the impact of this on tourism economies. Secondly, there was also a head jerk when we spoke about the impacts of this on cruise lines, because cruise lines essentially hub and in some cases spoke out of Florida. And because it's a big part of the Florida economy, I don't think that was properly thought through. Three, there was another head jerk when I explained to them based on the private sector mandate, which came from over 700 private sector entities. It wasn't just the idea of the CPSO. We're just an umbrella body representing the private sector. When we said this could hit CARICOM countries twice. Once, when you bring energy products or agricultural products in, and secondly, when you take them out. In short, every time you transit the port of Miami or the port of Everglades or any other port, and you're levied because our vessels are predominantly made in China, you are getting essentially a duplication of the fees. And I think the last thing that we said is that this would damage our marginal exports to the United States. Imagine someone making 15 cents or 50 cents US on a pound of soursop from Grenada to the US. We're able to do that because we have been working with the liners and working with the maritime carriers to keep the duties and the fares and the freight costs down. Now, when you put this $1 million on every visit, what you've done is that when you compute that back to the cost on the container and you compute it back to the cost on the soursop, you've lost your margins. And I think that was really 4 or 5 big matters we brought, and there was strong reaction to it. There's a consensus emerging that some of these factors that I've mentioned are unique. So I want to rest there.
Absolutely, Dr. Antoine. Now, let me bring in Mr. Dialli. Now, Mr. Dialli, we always hear about terminologies like imported inflation, and that imported inflation is then passed on to the consumer. I'm absolutely certain that when you got wind of this new particular measure, which again, we have to contextualize this by saying that this was probably a long time coming based on what Dr. Antoine just articulated. First of all, can you speak to the gut reaction from the private sector in Grenada to this and the potential fallout that may result?
Thank you, Dr. Bubb. As I think Dr. Antoine clearly outlined it in areas that we holistically didn't think about, for example, tourism. But on the trade side, particularly in business, and in our business, as Dr. Antoine and your listeners would know, we are a net importing country. As Minister pointed out, we have a huge trade deficit with the US in terms of our imports. And I'm going to touch on a few. Construction is one. We as a country just cited construction as a major sector for growth and development over the next medium term, next 3 years. Could you imagine what this tariff is going to do to cost of construction material, primarily lumber and steel, and what is going to happen there? We, based on the interventions made by the tropical president, he indicated that the average increase going across 40-foot containers will range in around $2,500 US per container. For us, take for example my company ACGL, we will import upwards of 50 plus containers a year on raw materials and other stuff coming out of the US. And if we pay now on average $2,000 US per 20 foot, and that increases by 50+%, the cost to us is going to be significant. And we can't absorb that, so we have to pass it on. So let me put it to you in granular terms. If a customer now pays $100 for a gallon of paint, that will normally be all the factors involved. Freight is going to move that product probably to $160, $70 a gallon. The issue is, can the customer afford that as we go forward? Similarly for steel and lumber and all those inputs into the construction sector. So it is going to be significant for us. Similarly for tourism, I can imagine the impact on ships, and then that will result probably in lower calls, less people, because the fares will have to go up significantly to make a cruise. So I think the impact is going to be severe. And the indirect impacts of that, of course, is the downturn in business. And as Minister rightfully pointed out, does the U.S. want to see a failure in the states in the Caribbean and to a lesser extent in their backyard, as we normally term it? So it is something that we have to seriously consider. I think Dr. Antoine highlighted it well. We need a carve-out, we need an exemption, we need something that is going to give us some level of remedy as we go forward. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that a Chinese ship, one of the container ships that bring in, 16,000 containers on average, those big ships, cannot dock on our docks because we don't have the facility. So we have to use the smaller ships that the Tropicals and the Kajimas and then use to bring in our containers. And as Patrick said, if you were to divide that 16,000 by a million, you probably get 125 US, which is nothing at all. But if you take a small ship like a Tropical that does 1,100 TEUs maximum, and you divide that, the cost is phenomenal. So it is just one of those things that the reality speaks to the fact that because of our size and where we're located, there must be some understanding of some concession or carve-out or whatever we term it as we move forward in this situation. Dr.
Yes, and Dr. Fontaine, let me bring you back here. And as I bring you back, sir, I remember, in the 90s, in the 80s as well, the Caribbean benefited from some measures of protectionism in respect of its banana trade. Yeah. And of course, the free trade era emerged. They call it the neoliberal new economic world order emerged. And it appears as if we're going back to what existed back pre the World Trade Organization formulations of that period to a period of protectionism again. Now, can you speak to the broader macroeconomic impacts of these tariffs that might be coming down the pike, not only on the Caribbean in respect of trade, but other macroeconomic issues that we should be thinking about?
This era of having these types of tariffs really goes against the grain of free trade. The world, the Caribbean included, has really benefited extensively from an era of free trade, as you rightly indicated, in the era of bananas. That was key to us maintaining that market for the length of time that we did. There was a period of the Caribbean Basin Initiative where our exports to the United States were encouraged and so on. All of that appears to be now reversed, and it is unprecedented in its scale in terms of the extent of those tariffs. And when you consider that in the Caribbean, we import a significant amount of our goods from the United States. You're talking about appliances, you're talking about medicines and other things that are imported from the United States. When that becomes the subject of those types of tariffs, then the consumers in the Caribbean will pay for it. Our inflation rates in the Caribbean largely reflects the inflation rate in the United States. So, for example, you find that where there is a low period of inflation in the US, that tends to translate to the Caribbean. The whole question of imported inflation. Now, if in the United States the prices begin to rise, as they will because of those huge tariffs, where you have tariffs being imposed by the US and you have counter tariffs because China will impose tariffs. Already they have announced a 20% tariff on goods going into the United States. Where you have that happening and you have the Caribbean islands as importers of raw material, for example, that have to resell, as well as the importers of final products, that is going to have a devastating impact on pricing. So one of the first things that we'll see impacted is prices in the grocery shops. And that's going to have obviously an impact. We've seen where Caribbean countries have not been minded to take care of those inflation increases in the country. So, for example, in some countries, you have an automatic mechanism that would reflect the increase in your wages as those prices begin to increase. Not so in the Caribbean. So what this would mean effectively is that real incomes begin to fall in the Caribbean. We become poorer. Dr. Antoine mentioned the whole issue of the tourism sector and how that is impacted. Bear in mind that tourism accounts for a significant amount of our gross domestic product in several Caribbean countries. What this also means is that we could possibly see declines in real gross domestic growth as a result of those tariffs. That is how far-reaching it is, because the scale is what is critical. We're not talking about 2% tariffs. We're talking about 20%, 40% tariffs. That is going to be huge. It will be a game changer. And I am not seeing the kind of preparation, no discussion within the Caribbean region that we must have at this time as to how we attempt to dull these impacts, because they are in fact coming.
And Dr. Fontaine, I want to follow up on this, because let us speak to broader issues of economic outlook in respect of issues like recessions and things like that. Now, Standard & Poor's, they recently, I believe that was about on the 27th of March, actually, it was, well, no, I think that was released. They did a revised economic outlook for 2025. And what they've said was, in 2025, a lot of growth for this period. They have revised it downward, and they are predicting, in fact, that there are going to be strong economic headwinds. Now, would these economic headwinds, as Standard & Poor's has articulated, have influence on perhaps a global recession that we might be seeing, especially against the backdrop of these trade wars?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's what we all learned in school, that anytime you have a trade war, it is never a good thing, because what you have is a series of measures and countermeasures, and no one knows exactly where that is going to end up. So that you may begin by focusing on a narrow range of items, say, and then because the war continues, it intensifies, that becomes more widespread. Now, anytime you begin to talk about a decline in your gross domestic product, that has serious implications for employment, implications for real incomes, implications for government revenues, because government depends sometimes very heavily on incomes generated as a result of economic growth. So you can expect to see those kinds of impacts, but because of it has also been weighing down on markets, on the stock market in particular, because anytime you have these increase in prices, you're going to have some impacts on interest rates. It's going to impact the stock market. And since you have a kind of a global system where you have investments, you have real capital flows out of some countries into others, all of that is going to be disrupted. You're going to have reverse capital flows now. You're going to have individuals looking for areas where they can invest in that may not necessarily be within the United States. All of that will have secondary implications. So I think we need to brace ourselves for that possibility that we could see a global depression, something along the lines of what happened in 2010 following the US housing crisis in the United States. We saw how that immediately impacted countries across the globe. Although this war started in the United States, the victims will be around the world. It will impact the economies of India, the Asian economies, and certainly it will impact the Caribbean economies, given our proximity to the US.
Let me bring back Dr. Antoine and Minister Andel here, if Minister Andel can still hear us. Now, Dr. Antoine, in respect of implementation of these specific shipping tariffs, I know that the hearing, you attended the U.S. Trade Representative Office hearing that occurred. Is there what's next in this process? And of course we saw that the White House occupant have been making on and off announcements about tariffs, especially in the context of Canada. Today the tariff is off. One day the Canadian Prime Minister is the devil. The next day he had a wonderful conversation with the Prime Minister of Canada. It's just so much volatility, so much uncertainty. It's sort of this the schizophrenic bipolar period in which we're in. What's next with this particular issue here, and what should we be looking out for?
Right. So let me just say that I think the point you've put on the table on volatility for me is the biggest point.
Yeah.
That the private sector and economies respond to signals. And clearly when the signals change so rapidly and so quickly, you can't plan. So what we're seeing with the stock markets and with the uncertainties where people are now pulling funds is a consequence of there being a lack of confidence based on the fact that the signals change so rapidly. And I just want to go back quickly to the question you asked on the macroeconomy. I think, as I said on a program elsewhere, that we're going to be having to look at a number of the countries where we've had budgets read already. We're going to have to certainly be preparing ourselves to go back to the drawing board on some of those because, one, revenues are likely to fall. Simple thing, Chris mentioned construction. For people who have tourism projects that are approved, hotels, so they're already approved and costed, quantity surveyors giving you the estimate. You're now not sure what you're going to be looking at. And for projects that are ongoing, the Caricom and our Caribbean countries are already high-cost destinations. To take any more cost on top of that is to make us uncompetitive. Why is this different to India and China and some of the other large economies, Chile, Argentina? Because we don't have a large internal market and we don't have a large production structure to service that. So I'm concerned about that element. Where do we go next with this process? The CPSO is having a call tomorrow at 2 p.m., where again, we're bringing the entire private sector from the region together. And we're going to be putting some additional amendments to the proposals that we tabled at the USTR public hearings to them before we submit it the following day on Tuesday. In the meantime, we've met with the Caricom ambassadors in Washington. We've met with a number of legislators in the United States with friends and colleagues. We've held a number of bilaterals with other private sector entities so that the lobbying continues. We have, by this evening, we're going to have a rough estimate on the impact on tourism. The CPSO is built up on a quantitative platform. So recognizing that there wasn't an appreciation of what this would do to tourism and to cruise lines, we've actually come together to come up with an estimate that's been going on since last Wednesday of what the impact of this is going to be on tourism and the impact on cruise lines. We should have that done by this evening for contribution to the meeting tomorrow. Then the USTR has to take all of this into account, including, no doubt, what will come back from Secretary of State Rubio. And the US will ultimately have to make a position, to take a position on this. And then once that position is taken and the initial date, the original date for the position being taken and the measure being instituted was 17th of April. A month after that, if they follow that sort of schedule, there's going to be implementation. So you talk about implementation in the month of May, right? Which is not a long time from now. So there's a lot of work to be done. This matter sneaked up on most globally. I mean, in the corridors in between the public hearings, that was really the word that many private sector conglomerates, countries spoke about. It moved so rapidly from the disclosure, the publication of the final report in January, to the sanctions announced in February, to the public hearings, which closed on the 20th in terms of making oral presentations. It moved so rapidly. And I dare say that the impact for us in every facet, think about the funds NIS has, that's sort of invested in stocks and bonds outside of the country at a time when they are under stress. Think about falling tourism revenues because people in the United States, one of our biggest markets, don't have the disposable income to travel anymore. Yes, I agree with my dear friend and brother and UWI K-Ville colleague, and might I add my striker on the football team, I played defense. I agree that is going to have a massive impact on the cost of living, but let's get specific. Food and nutrition security will suffer in region, and we are one of the regions that's most food insecure. So we have USAID funding going, we have this measure, and then we potentially have other matters coming. Kellon, this is the perfect storm. And the region really has to dig deep in terms of regionalism. And I hope we have some time to talk about that, because there's no reason why we need to continue being vulnerable with all the land in Guyana, Suriname, and Belize, with so much labor that's sitting down on the blocks, with capital in bank accounts getting 1% and 2% if they're lucky. With we just have no reason why every single time someone sneezes, we need to worry about catching the cold. We need to dig deep in terms of regionalism, I think.
No. I was saying catching pneumonia, not necessarily the cold.
I like that.
but at a governmental level, and I'll bring back Minister Andal here. Minister Andal, at a governmental level, I know that the CPSO has been working in tandem with Caricom with this. Is there any intention, Minister Andal, for Caricom to convene perhaps a special session to treat with this? And of course, I know the Prime Minister, again, as I said at the last town hall, he did speak to this, but also looking to alternative trading routes. So for example, I know that the current administration in Grenada, and refreshingly for me, because I am a proud Pan-Africanist, has been doing that global South-South pivot, which I really appreciate. Is this a time now, Minister Andal, for us to really purposefully speed up those initiatives around having closer trading ties with Africa?
So cliches become cliches for good reason.
Yes.
And the question for us in the Caribbean, should we see ourselves just as victims or as agents? And every challenge presents an opportunity.
I agree.
So even as we have to continue to engage the United States administration, we have to recognize that we cannot direct policy of any other sovereign country. We don't have sufficient political, economic, and importantly, military weight to do that. So therefore, dialogue continues to be of paramount importance to us. So we have to continue along that path. But we have to develop the ability to walk more than one path simultaneously. And you correctly identify the opportunities presented by so-called South-South cooperation. And while I'm not an economist, I'm not versed in matters of monetary policy and so on. I believe that the two doctors here, Dr. Fontaine and Dr. Antoine, might want to weigh in on something that I've been wondering about even before my foray into politics. We see, for example, that in the OECS, we have a common currency. Our economies are similar to an extent, but even within the sub-region, you may find that, for example, Antigua or St. Lucia might be a bit more advanced economically. Economies might be a little bit stronger, more diversified than another country within the Union. Mm-hmm. Now, what is stopping us? We see that the EU, with widely diverse levels of economic development, you have the traditional powerhouses like Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and then you had the more recent converts to EUism, the Romanias, the Poland, and so on. Of course, in the beginning, there will be some disruption as you adjust, but they were able to implement the EU as a common currency, and there does not seem to have been economic collapse as a result of that. So I would like the two docs to weigh in on that, the possibility or maybe even the necessity of having a common Caricom currency, or as an alternative or as a stepping stone, convertibility of our respective currencies. Now, given the unpredictable nature of the international scene, and particularly the decision-making processes emanating from one northern neighbor, it is important that we start now paying serious attention to the question of import substitution. Because, as Dr. Fontaine said, we import inflation. But more importantly, We import lifestyle diseases, diabetes from all of the sweet stuff, the cornflakes packed with sugar, packed with salt, and very little nutritional value. We have to look at diversifying our trading partners, our trade routes, and so on. So therefore, while these measures are going to be devastating to our economy if implemented in the way that they are currently being pushed, we must see this as a wake-up call. We cannot be living in supposedly agricultural countries and be massive net importers of food. Dr. Antoine correctly pointed out to the abundance of land and other resources in Suriname, Belize, and Guyana, and even here in Grenada. We are seriously underpopulated. We import sometimes green bananas in Grenada. We import sweet potatoes. A few months ago, I went into a supermarket in St. George's, and there was frozen cassava imported from Costa Rica. Now, these are things that don't even require any great agricultural expertise for us to produce. So we have to take an extremely serious look and make sure that we invest properly in the ability to feed ourselves, to improve the nutritional content of what we eat, and to reduce our vulnerability to not only capricious trade practices by other countries, but also the natural disasters to which we are so prone. When we look at the situation with Beryl, from which we are still in recovery phase, I visited Caricom a few weeks ago in February, and many of the houses still need to be covered, but we have a massive labor shortage. So we have to look for the opportunities in the midst of all of the potential danger that is looming over us. And that question of expanding our trade and diplomatic reach, engaging more with countries who appear to be a little bit more reliable at this point, that is key moving forward.
And to the question, Dr. Antoine and Dr. Fontaine, to Mr. Andos, Honorable Andos' question here about how we look at currency. And of course, we know that the EC dollar, for example, is pegged to the US dollar, and it has been like that for as long as I've been alive, as long as most of us have been alive, and the EC dollar has been around. But let us speak to that issue of currency.
Yeah. So,
Dr. Antoine, yes.
Let me jump in quickly and say that I agree with what the distinguished minister said on the currency point. Let me address that directly. One of the issues is that the vision for this Caricom spoke about using what was then called a regional stock market as a bridge across the countries where you could get people investing in ventures in each other's countries. And I'm going right back to his point on opportunities, right? I'm linking that to the issue of convertibility, because convertibility for itself, without a purpose, I think is dead. But I think what this issue is that if we have this regional stock market, for which the most distinguished minister was there in Barbados, along with Prime Minister Mitchell, when the heads agreed to have the CPSO actually drive a study, which for the first time has all the players on the table to develop a regional stock market. That's a big part of it. But there's another part when the minister talks about convertibility. I want to say that I'm befuddled at why this is not an issue that we solved already, certainly for things like agriculture. We know what's traded, we know the companies trading, so that essentially those injections by central banks need not be injections that find themselves into the illicit market. Kellan Bubb is trading with Minister Ander, is trading with my distinguished colleague from Dominica Fontaine, so we know who is trading. We have agencies that essentially just allow imports and exports to be paid for in the domestic currencies with a war chest of US behind it in case it's required. You're not trading in US in case it's required, right? And that is, we have the technology for that. Let me repeat so that people hear. The technology exists for that now. There's something called Carib Coin, the Carib dollar that we've had a private sector entity put on the table. So once we get the commitment of central banks, that can be done. So the minister is on point. But I wanted to say too that this is a time for us to dig deeper. We had the 25 by 25, which we didn't achieve. It's now 25 by 2030. But I'm not laughing and I'm not discouraged. What I think the heads have done in agreeing to that, and certainly a number of the countries in driving it, is that there is a momentum in agriculture that's never been there before. So I think what we need to do is to see how do we achieve some of these things. The minister is absolutely correct when he talked about the pain I feel too when I see bananas that we would leave, Minister, you would understand these terms, as rejects on the ground 30 years ago, being sold in the supermarket at high prices. What has happened? So I think we need to bring our resources together. And then there's sectors in Grenada and sectors in the OECS that are growing sectors. Chris Diali did an excellent job with paints and coatings in Grenada. Excellent. That's Grenada's third largest export in the OECS to Caricom. So he's also exporting to the more developed countries. The United States is telling us in their strategic interests, they're protecting and driving products that make sense for them. We need to do the same thing for paints and coatings and so many other small things that I think we have an opportunity to do. And I want to thank the minister for that, because I know he's been open and we've been pushing on that. And then second, Minister, you're right. We need to do more with Brazil. We need to do more with Chile. We need to do more with Argentina. Those countries have production systems, research and technologists and specialists that can help us to grow our production while we start diversifying our trade with them. And then finally, we still need to do more on the political front. We don't do enough with the United States, although we are the third border. We don't invest enough in diplomatic relations, I'm not just talking about ambassadors, I'm talking about lobbyists to keep us in the room with the United States. We have Guyana, the world's largest reserve of oil. We have Suriname coming on board soon, among the top 10. We have Trinidad and Tobago with gas, and we have our own reserves. The Caribbean is of strategic importance to the United States, and they know that. So we have to invest more leveraging those things so that we can get what we want. So I'm agreeing with everything that I think Minister said, but I'm particularly highlighting what he said about the importance of us producing more and also us forming bridges with those around us, including Africa. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely, gentlemen. We are quickly running out of time, but I did want to press Minister Andal on some other issues, Minister Andal. So I would have you here, and then we'll go back to the rest of the panel for closing comments. But Minister Andal, on the question of the Cuban medical mission, of course, we saw that the Secretary of State was in the region last week. He commented on that in Jamaica. And again, he keeps insisting that, the Caribbean is engaging in human trafficking, which is akin to slave labor coming from him that's very rich. But have you been approached, has the government of Grenada been approached by the U.S. administration demanding discovery on how Grenada treats with its bilateral relationship with Cuba on the question of the Cuban medical mission? Have they requested any information, files, documentation on compensation structures, things like that?
So I would like to clarify something.
Yes.
These allegations about forced labor and human trafficking as regards to the Cuban medical brigades did not originate with this administration. In fact, as far back as 2023, in an informal conversation with a U.S. diplomat, that question was posed to me. So the lesson
under the
here
Biden
is
administration.
that, pardon me?
Under the Biden administration.
Yes, indeed. Yes. So I think there's an important lesson here for us in Grenada and in the Caribbean, in that we tend to believe, often erroneously, that there are wide and wild
differences. Yeah.
Between administration.
When it comes to
U.S. foreign
imperialism,
policy tends to be very consistent and coherent.
Yes.
And some may espouse it more openly, but it is always about America first. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Grenada has an obligation to push Grenada first. Yep. So I just wanted to get that clear.
Yes.
So yes, we have received official communication via diplomatic note from the United States administration as far back as September 2024, 2 months before the last presidential elections in the US. So if we want to point fingers, we know where it starts. In our case, we are quite confident that our engagement with the Cuban brigades is in full conformity with ILO standards and other international practices. And we have communicated that to the US authorities. And we have no fear, based on the way that the program is carried out here, that there's any hint of human trafficking or forced labor. All right? Now, I said some time ago in another program that every country has ways and means of ensuring that people who benefit from state support in the educational formation, there's some mechanism put in place to ensure that something is put back. In Grenada, for example, if you receive a government of Grenada scholarship, you are bonded for a period of years, usually equivalent to the duration of your studies. I've been fortunate to receive 2 government of Grenada scholarships, and in both cases, I had to sign a bond. It just happens that in my case, that Grenada is so much in me that I have absolutely zero interest in living in any other country, no matter how rough or how hard times may become here. Good? In the United States of America, it is well documented that one of the greatest sources of poverty is the fact that people are repaying student loans, in many cases, federal student loans, for decades after they graduate. So, as the famous American saying goes, there is no free lunch. Somebody pays for it at the end of the day. But regarding Cuba and its cooperation with us, we are quite clear and quite confident that there is no element of human trafficking or forced labor. The Cubans have been providing invaluable service through their medical, engineering, educational, and other brigades to us over the years. And without the contribution of the Cuban Medical Brigade, particularly in the field of health, crop was spoken pipe here in Grenada. Not only do the Cubans provide specialists and other allied health professionals, on an annual basis, they provide several scholarships for Grenadian students who would otherwise not be able to pursue professional and academic studies in Cuba. And I take this opportunity to appeal to our traditional friends to make such facilities available to Grenadian and Caribbean students. One of the problems we face is that even after we pay millions of dollars to train health professionals, another word doesn't come to mind now, although I don't want to say poach, but many of our professionals are approached to ply their trade in countries who can afford to compensate them better financially than we can. So this is something that we take seriously. We are in no way going to participate in or support human trafficking or forced labor. And we are quite confident, based on the nature of the arrangements we have with the Cubans, that there is no element of such in Grenada.
Absolutely. And Mr. Ander, finally, before we get to closing comments, that has to do with, and again, and the viewers are expressing the same view. When it comes to foreign policy, both Democrats and Republicans are the same. One might be more politically correct than the other. But as a note of history, we have to make the point that it was a Democratic president who imposed embargoes on Cuba. It was not a Republican president. It was a Democratic president that everybody loves. That's John F. Kennedy. Okay, he was just as imperialist as the others, right? And they all maintained it since the Kennedy administration. But that has to do with, of course, the mass deportations that are occurring. And again, we also have to caveat this by saying that Barack Obama continues to have the reputation of deporting more citizens, more undocumented migrants from the US than Republicans. Of course, the difference now is that with this administration, they are engaging in lots of extrajudicial means to proceed with deportation. So can you speak to if you've received any communication from the Department of State, from US Homeland Security Department in respect of Grenadians who are currently caught up in deportation stings, and what arrangements is the government putting in place to ensure that we can facilitate, if in fact there is a surge of returning Grenadian migrants to Grenada?
A few weeks ago, we did receive communication from the U.S. authorities informing us that they would be repatriating or deporting Grenadian citizens. They did not give a timeline. They did not give names. They did not give numbers either. We responded immediately that we are ready and prepared to receive our nationals. We requested that any deportation be done in a humane way. Also, that evidence be provided that those being deported are genuine Grenadians. There was also a further request for us to accommodate third country deportees, and we politely declined because we are not in a position. We have seen in recent years that many of the people, especially those with criminal records, they come home and some of them continue to be involved in criminal activity. So this is something that we as government we have put together a cabinet task force to make preparations for if and when people are repatriated. We have requested a CV so that we know who is coming back to us. But we have to, everything is intertwined. And as the US is cracking down on illegal migration, they have to be extremely careful that the trade measures that they are implementing do not create situations in the Caribbean that result in economic dislocation, thereby fueling the very thing that the trade measures are purported to be trying to achieve. Yeah, so it is important that all the points put forward by the CPSO through Dr. Antoine be considered favorably by the US authorities, because failure to do so would inevitably lead to people finding ways and means to cross borders illegally.
So you say a task force has been implemented by the government of Grenada. What is the remit of that task force? Is it a case where you're looking at how returning nationals will be processed, trying to siphon off, for example, who might be criminal deportees versus who might just be, civilian deportees? How are you thinking about this?
Right. So some of them will obviously have had criminal records in the US. So we have to look at social interventions to ensure that we provide an environment that encourages them to be rehabilitated and to be productive citizens. Many others will be law-abiding, hard-working citizens who unfortunately did not have their immigration status regularized in the United States. Many of them have acquired skills, know-how that we would welcome. So considering that our population is not growing by much, this may well be a blessing, as Black Adam said, that we will be having some of our people come back and render services that are sorely lacking in some cases in Grenada. Many of them have accumulated capital, which can be used to invest meaningfully to help to build our country. So we have to be open about it. Every country has the right to control its border. And if they say that they are going to be sending people back, once we are confident that they are our citizens, we welcome them back. Those who need some form of social intervention, we are working on trying to set up frameworks that those interventions will be able to use to integrate them into society. And those who are normal citizens who just happen to be irregular migrants, we are more than happy to welcome them back and to provide opportunities for them to grow economically and otherwise among family.
I just want to press you finally, Minister. You said that the U.S. requested that Grenada welcome non-Grenadian nationals. Did they specify who these nationals were, and did they give a rationale for why they would want to have Grenada, a 133 square mile island, host non-national returnees from the United States?
No, they did not provide any rationale. It was a direct inquiry as to whether we'd be willing to accept deportees from third country. Simple. And we simply said to them, sorry, we are unable to. And as far as I know, that matter has been laid to rest.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we have a question for Dr. Jocelyn Peters-Jason. Do you offer rehabilitation programs? I'm curious about how these initiatives might impact job opportunities for a local community in respect of returning Grenadian nationals.
So let us look. Currently, we are facing a labor shortage, particularly in the agricultural and construction sectors in Grenada. Mm-hmm. Some of the major construction firms have been approaching Grenada for permission to import skilled labor. Many of the hotels that are being built have to import specialized skills in order for the projects to move forward. So it is quite possible, even probable, that if and when Grenadians are repatriated from the US or other countries, that there will be among them people with the skills that we have been importing of late. So apart from the legal obligation to take back our people, we still see it as a potential opportunity because our country is becoming grossly underpopulated. We have primary schools which in 30 years ago had 300-400 children, now down to 79. We have schools. In fact, recently we've had to close down what was named Palmer School and convert it into a secondary school. So that could be a small measure to help to boost population and to help to increase and improve our skills bank. So we have to look at it in a positive light, and we have to make sure that we don't lump all of the deportees in one group, that we put measures in place to help those with a criminal past or with other problems of delinquency and so on, help to get them on the right path and to try to insulate society as much as possible from whatever harmful effect their return may pose to us.
Absolutely, and not only that, because we claim to be a Christian society. Again, I say we claim to be a Christian society, and sometimes I think some of us don't behave as what we claim to be. Because again, this is an appeal to us as a national community that when folks return to Grenada, that we don't start shaming people and start just denigrating people. Oh, you're a returnee, you're a deportee, you're this, you're that, you're the third. Right? Because sometimes I've seen that in Grenada. Sometimes we call people deportees. Well, they call me a JCB when I go back to Grenada, although my accent hasn't changed. But
yeah,
so I think, yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. You're correct that we have to be careful not to stigmatize or pigeonhole people.
Yes.
Now, on the question of the JCB, I think that is a term that has been grossly twisted. That originated, in my view, as an affectionate way of saying, this person just come back, I just come back for the carnival and so on. And then it was abbreviated JCB. And we know with all of the sensitivity and the need for political correctness in some countries, people take offense at everything. Normal adjectives have become, if not criminalized, taboo. You can't use words like skinny, thin, fat. If you say a man tall, he might take offense at it. You can't say a man short, he's vertically challenged and all kind of nonsense like that. So I think that we have to be sensitive, because a lot of things that we said in the past were indeed hurtful and are still hurtful to the people at whom they are targeted. But we have to be careful that we don't go overboard. When you go too far on one extreme, it creates a condition for people on the other extreme to push a platform that seems reasonable and that will cause a number of people who otherwise might not have been affected by the rhetoric of those fringe people to ascribe to it. And then you end up in a situation directly opposite to what you had intended by your actions. So everything is about balance. It's about sensitivity, but not oversensitivity.
Absolutely. And this is such an important conversation today. Of course, this is what we try to do here on the Bubb Report, to educate and empower our viewers and listeners with respect to the issues that will affect them directly. But at this point, we do have to close the program. And I would go over to you, Dr. Fontaine, sir, for some closing comments. And thank you. I hope we can rely on your expertise as we are in this very volatile economic period in the future, sir, so that you can, work us through and talk us through how to make sense of all of these volatile economic issues. So thank you again for appearing on the report, sir.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, and certainly I'm available whenever you're ready. And I just want to say it's very refreshing to hear a sitting minister talking about this whole idea of how better we can coordinate the efforts of Caricom and the issues you raised concerning the possible having a common currency, because what we have in the Caribbean is a mix of different currency regimes, which does not help us as a trading bloc. So these are issues that I hope we can talk to in more detail in the future. I would like to see a greater involvement of a discussion along the lines of what Dr. Antoine spoke about, having this regionalism question, the same vision that our forebears had when they started the Caribbean Federation over 50 years ago. I think we need to revisit that and see how we can do better at preparing ourselves as a regional body to deal with that issue of what is going on now in the global world and how we can protect ourselves against it.
Dr. Antoine, yes, thank you, sir. Dr. Antoine?
Yes, so thank you for having us on, us being the Caricom Private Sector Organisation.
Yes, sir.
Comprised of over 5,500 firms in our community across all 15 countries. For us, this is an opportunity, as you've provided it, to really advocate that the private sector continues to be engaged on this matter. And I want to just make the point that the Chamber of Commerce in Grenada had the occasion of engaging with myself and I with them last Friday. And the engagement actually was very well attended and very lively. What I've said to them is that the private sector must not let up. We have to continue working more closely than we have in the past because the issues are not letting up. This one in particular, we'll see us have the call tomorrow at 2 p.m. To refine the positions that the CPSO intends to put to the USTR in the public comments process. And we're doing that in consultation with the Caricom Secretariat and also in consultation with the Caricom heads through Prime Minister Motley, who is in fact the chair. Look, this is in fact a critical matter for Caricom. This is the perfect storm. $2,500 to $4,000 increase per container. That's not going to go away. coming at a time when we are sitting on the eve of hearing whether we have tariffs imposed on us on April the 2nd. But in all this, the region has a lot to contribute to the stability of this community, and which is why I think I said last year at a conference at the Florida International University that economic security now is national security. It's no longer just about ships and guns and boots on the ground. It's really about the economic lever, and we see the impact of it on the negative side. We also see the impact of it on the positive side. And finally, everything you said about joining forces in South-South cooperation, I'm a believer. The last word I want to say is that this is yet another opportunity for Caricom to build out the integration process. It's not rhetoric. We can do it. We must do it. And with that, I want to thank you and the colleagues on the call. And I would say to Dr. Fontaine that I have two well-positioned Grenadian first, Dominican children. And I know that they'll be willing to contribute to your cause as well. You will ask no more questions after I've said that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Diali, sir, over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Well, Kellan, my closing comments will be 10 seconds.
Yes.
I cannot agree more than what Patrick and the minister have said. I think we are on the right track with South-South and other trading and setting up foreign. My only thing to the minister is that I know our Prime Minister has launched an idea of getting rid of work permits so that we could solve the labor shortage in agriculture and construction and so on. And we've been talking about moving of people in the Caricom region for decades or years now, and we don't seem to be getting it. So I am saying, take the bold step, get rid of work permits, and let's bring in people to help us in construction and agriculture and solve the labor crisis, because that, to me, is the first short-term and immediate low-hanging fruit we could deal with to get these industries. And if we want to talk about food security, production, and the agricultural side, in whatever way we can, is where we have to start. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And of course, last but by no means least, Minister Andal, over to you, sir, for some closing comments. And before we do, of course, we do want to have you back, sir, because you know, it will be the anniversary of Beryl. We'll be having some programming here. And of course, we know that your constituency, your parish in general, was also ravaged. We hear a lot about Carriacou and Petit Martinique, but also St. Patrick was ravaged. There was also a major house fire there. I understand that. I saw some reporting on the reconstruction of those houses. So there's a lot that we want to invite you back to come to speak about in respect of your constituency, but certainly on the question of these foreign policy issues, we're glad to have you. So over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Good. So thank you very much for having me. And I must say that it was a very enlightening program for me, listening to Senator Diali, to Dr. Fontaine and Dr. Antoine. It shows that we have the human capital in the Caribbean. And in spite of being islands, we have to learn to not be insular. If we pull that type of brain power together, I have absolutely no doubt that the Caribbean region will grow by leaps and bounds. By way of closing, I would like to advise the U.S. authorities that they must be careful about unintended consequences.
Amen.
You do not want to kill the baby while swatting away the mosquitoes. We have been trusted and reliable partners of the U.S. for many years, and it would be an historical tragedy for Caricom economies and societies to sink as a result of a conflict not initiated by us and in which we have no interest in prolonging. We have to, notwithstanding all of that, embrace the opportunities for intra-regional cooperation, for looking at more functional ways of integrating Caribbean communities for the good of all of us. Dr. Antoine spoke about the millions of dollars sitting idly in banks and credit unions. And it is time that private sector and government take steps to put together a workable plan with timelines by which we use those idle funds to funnel into productive activities in our respective countries. We have to look at not duplicating what each other does. If you look at the question of health, for example, it may not be economically feasible for each of us to have a state-of-the-art cardiology unit, but we can say maybe we have one center in the Southern Caribbean, another in the North. Someone can specialize in sickle cells or what have you. So we have to look at ways to rationalize our scarce resources, to employ our brain power, to detribalize our political system, because that is a massive impediment to growth in individual countries as well as Caricom-wide. So let us embrace the opportunities presented by these threats. And once we use the personnel at our disposal and we display the necessary political will and wisdom, I'm quite confident that Caricom will eventually arise stronger out of this looming crisis. So thank you to my fellow panelists, to the listeners and viewers, and to you, Dr. Bubb, for continuing to do a sterling job of providing a platform for people to put forward policy ideas and so on, and for the general Caribbean public to have the opportunity to listen, to participate, and to learn. Thank you.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, very, very important, sobering conversation we had this morning in respect of the whole issue of these trade tariffs. Again, that it seems as though, you know, this is the Monroe Doctrine on steroids, really, is what we're witnessing here in respect of U.S. posturing, the return to this era of protectionism in many respects. And if there is any time when we need to be unified as a region, it has to move from sloganeering to implementing a lot of what we have on paper in respect of the Caribbean single market and economy, for example, in respect of currency unions, in respect of how we treat with savings and investment, in respect of our own social security time bombs that exist. Of course, the whole issue of labor shortages, again, you know, that is an issue we will be treating with here on the Bubb Report in a subsequent episode. But this is a time to really implement a lot of what we have been discussing in theory. But not only in theory, we have certain roadmaps. A lot of it is on paper, right? And if anything, that the current regime in Washington, and yes, I use the word regime deliberately, perhaps you might want to understand the difference between what is a regime and an administration. But the regime in Washington, if it's one thing that they're doing is that they are causing us to do some serious reflexive introspection in respect of our own existence as a Caribbean civilization. So there's a lot of work to do there. So viewers and listeners, on behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, I am your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, thanking everyone for tuning in to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. We'll see you next week, Sunday, for another installment of the program. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.